The long road that led Chapo Guzman from the mountains of Sinaloa to the courthouse behind us today was paved with death, drugs, and destruction.
Last Thursday night, the world's most notorious drug lord, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was extradited to the United States. He was arraigned in New York on Friday and faces 6 separate indictments across the country for his role as the head of the Sinaloa drug cartel.
Violence paralyzed the streets of a Mexican city yesterday as security forces traded gunfire with heavily armed members of a drug cartel. The son of the notorious drug kingpin El Chapo was taken into custody, then let go.
El Chapo is arguably the most notorious drug lord in history to come out of Mexico. He was the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, the most powerful and violent criminal organization that controls the illegal drug trade in Mexico and beyond. But El Chapo did not rule alone. He had a loyal and brutal army of hitmen who did his bidding. They carried out his orders, whether it was to silence a rival, kidnap a witness, or torture a traitor. They are the ones who enforced his authority and spread his terror. They are the ones who made what he was, untouchable. However, with El Chapo's capture and imprisonment, what happened to his 10 most brutal hitmen? Did they share the same with their boss, or are they still in the business of selling drugs, executing people, and unleashing terror on the world around them? Let's find out in this video. Number 1. El Bravo. He was born Manuel Aponte Alejandro Gomez Diaz, but he would be known in the underworld as El Bravo, which means the Fierce One. El Bravo was a loyal lieutenant of El Chapo, the notorious leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, and the mastermind of his multiple jailbreaks and escapes. But his life was not always on the wrong side of the law. He was born in Chilpancingo, a city in the southern state of Guerrero, Mexico, on December 10, 1974. Chilpancingo is a city plagued by poverty, violence, and corruption. El Bravo grew up in a harsh and hostile environment where survival was the only goal. Growing up, he had no dreams, no hopes, no future, but he had only one ambition: to escape his miserable life. And he found his escape in the Mexican army, where he served for 6 years, from 2000 to 2006. But in 2006, he was assigned to a mission that would change his life forever. He was ordered to track down and capture El Chapo, the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, who had escaped from prison in 2001 and had become the most wanted criminal in the world. El Bravo and his men got to work, and their hunt took them closer and closer to their target. But what happened when they came face to face with El Chapo was as unexpected as it was shocking. Instead of arresting El Chapo, El Bravo switched sides. He betrayed his country, his comrades, and his oath. He accepted El Chapo's offer of money, power, and protection, and he joined the Sinaloa Cartel as El Chapo's personal hitman and head of security. As someone with exceptional military experience, El Chapo knew El Bravo was in the right position to keep him safe and make him stay 2 steps ahead of the authorities who were constantly searching for him. So, El Chapo made him the head of his personal security, and his job was to keep the boss safe and ensure he didn't fall into the hands of his enemies. Even when he did, he should orchestrate a plan to get him out. Aponte was therefore responsible for building several tunnels in northern Mexico, which allowed El Chapo to break out of prison multiple times, evade capture, and move narcotics across the border. In 2012, El Bravo helped El Chapo escape a trap set by Rodrigo Vinas, a Mexican Navy operations coordinator who pretended to be a narco dealer to lure El Chapo into a trap. Aponte sensed something was wrong and called for backup, creating a diversion that allowed them to slip past a military checkpoint. But Aponte's luck ran out when El Chapo was arrested again in February 2014. He tried to take over the cartel but faced resistance from other factions. On April 9, 2014, his maimed body was found in La Cruz de Elota, a town in Sinaloa. To date, those who ended him have never been identified, but many suspect they were his former allies who had a score to settle with him. Number 2. Jose Antonio Torres. Jose Antonio Torres was better known in the Mexican drug underworld as Marufo, or the Jaguar. You may not have heard of him, but anybody who was involved in the Mexican drug trade would never forget the name Marufo. He was the one who oversaw and supervised the smuggling of tons of illegal substances from Juarez, Mexico to the US, crossing one of the most dangerous borders in the world. It was Marufo who waged a brutal war against the Juarez cartel, the rival gang that controlled the territory before El Chapo's invasion. But who was Marufo before he became the Jaguar? How did he rise to such a position of power and violence? The truth is, not much is known about his past. He was a shadowy figure who operated independently for a long time, trafficking illegal substances in the northern region of Chihuahua, a state in Mexico. He paid a tax to the Juarez cartel through a corrupt cop who allowed him to operate in the region. At the time, Jaguar had no boss and was not part of any cartel. He was more like a freelance substance dealer who operated like a mercenary. No one knows exactly how or when he met El Chapo. But they started working together sometime in the mid-2000s when El Chapo decided to expand his empire and take over the Juarez cartel's roots. He needed someone who could lead his army of gunmen, someone who could strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. So he hired El Bravo as his top lieutenant and gave him command of a group of elite executioners known as Gente Nueva. They were El Chapo's shock troops, his special forces, and his death squad. From 2008 to 2012, Marufo unleashed a reign of terror in Juarez and its surroundings. He ordered hundreds of assassinations, kidnappings, tortures, and massacres. He did not care about collateral damage or human rights. He only cared about fulfilling El Chapo's orders and eliminating anyone who stood in his way. According to official records, at least 1,600 people were executed by Gente Nueva under his supervision. One of his most notorious acts was when he targeted a wedding party in 2009. The groom was a relative of some members of the Juarez cartel, and Marufo wanted to send them a message. He kidnapped and executed the groom on his wedding day, in front of his bride and guests. The groom was also a U.S. citizen, and this drew the attention of the U.S. authorities. They added Marufo to their list of most wanted fugitives and offered a reward for his capture. But it was another deadly attack that same year that sealed his fate. On September 3, 2009, Marufo sent a group of masked men to storm a rehab center in Ciudad Juarez. They lined up 20 patients against a wall and fired at them. 18 died on the spot, and 2 survived with serious injuries. The victims were suspected of being informants or rivals of the Sinaloa Cartel. This attack sparked outrage and condemnation from both sides of the border. It also put a bounty on Marufo's head from both the Mexican and U.S. governments. Marufo's reign of terror came to an end in 2012, when he was arrested by Mexican authorities in Torreon, Coahuila. He was extradited to the U.S., where he pleaded guilty to several charges related to illegal substance trafficking and murder. He is currently serving a 40-year sentence in a federal prison in Arizona. Number 3. Mario Iglesias Villegas. If you thought Marufo was brutal, then you haven't met his partner, the Grim Reaper, the man who was once El Chapo's most trusted and feared assassin. He earned the nickname the Grim Reaper for his brutal and merciless butchering skills. He was not only a hitman, but also a leader of the Sinaloa Cartel's death squad known as Sicarios, the assassin that other assassins looked up to. Mario joined the Sinaloa Cartel in 2008 and became one of El Chapo's right-hand men. He was in charge of the bloody war against the rival Juarez cartel in the city of Ciudad Juarez. In just 4 years, he personally took out at least 4,000 people, making him one of the most brutal human butchers in history. His savage violence helped the Sinaloa Cartel win the turf war and dominate the drug trade. But Mario's reign of terror came to an end in 2012 when he was captured by the authorities when he made the biggest mistake in his career. He kidnapped and butchered a U.S. citizen and his relatives in 2010, along with his partner Marufo and some other Sinaloa Cartel hitmen. The victims' bodies were found in Ciudad Juarez on May 10, 2010. This crime drew the attention of the U.S. government, which wanted to bring Mario to justice. On March 3, 2022, Mario was sentenced to life in prison by a U.S. district court and fined $100,000 for his involvement in money laundering, illegal substance trafficking, murders, conspiracies, and possession of firearms, among other charges. Hopefully, he will never see the light of day again. Number 4. El Cholo Ivan. El Cholo was the most trusted lieutenant and the deadliest assassin of El Chapo. He was born Orso Ivan Gastelum, but everyone in the Mexican narco scene knew him by his nickname El Cholo. He was the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel's squad of hitmen or sicarios. He was more like the hitman of hitmen because El Chapo assigned him the responsibility of managing other hitmen in the cartel and curtailing their excesses. This position within the cartel earned him a reputation for being ruthless and violent. He was so brutal that he once beat up some policemen so badly that El Chapo had to reprimand him. He was also suspected of being responsible for 80% of the cartel's killings, many of which he carried out by himself. In 2005, he was arrested on rifle possession charges, but he was released 3 years later due to a flawed investigation. In 2009, he was captured again after a gunfight with soldiers, but he escaped from prison in 2010. He was nearly caught in 2010, 2014, and 2015, but he always got away. El Cholo's life took a tragic twist in 2013 when his girlfriend, a 20-year-old model named Susan Flores, was unalived by the army during a pursuit. She was studying at a university in Culiacan when she met and fell in love with the notorious Hitman, who was devastated and furious after her death. He accused the soldiers of taking her because they couldn't kill him. He hung 67 banners around her hometown to express his grief and anger. The banners read, "The soldiers killed her because they came to kill me, and they couldn't. The girl had never carried guns, much less fired them." His luck ran out in January 2016 when he was caught with El Chapo by Mexican authorities in a raid on their hideout in Los Mochis. They tried to flee arrest through a tunnel, but they were nabbed by the police at a checkpoint. While El Chapo was shortly extradited to the US, El Cholo was detained in a maximum security prison in Mexico, from where he attended court sessions to contest his extradition to the US. This legal battle went on for years, but on April 1st, 2020, El Cholo was successfully extradited to the US, where he's facing multiple criminal charges bordering on possession and distribution of illegal substances, illegal possession, and use of firearms, among others. He faces anywhere between 30 years to life in prison if found guilty and convicted for his crimes by a federal district court judge. Number 5. Jose Rodrigo Arechiga Gamboa, alias El Chino Antrax. El Chino Antrax was the leader of Los Antrax, a group of elite assassins who worked for the Sinaloa Cartel. El Chino was not only a ruthless assassin, but also a flamboyant show-off. He loved to flaunt his wealth and luxury on social media, posting pictures of himself with expensive cars, yachts, jewelry, and cash. He wore a skull-shaped diamond ring that was the symbol of his group. He was smart to blur his face in his photos, but that was not enough to keep him safe as he traveled around the world, enjoying his wealth and fame, which came with a heavy price. The US authorities were watching his every move, using his photos and every other trail he was leaving behind to track him down. They noticed his unique ring, his tattoos, and his travel patterns. In 2014, they finally caught him in the Netherlands and extradited him to the US, where he faced charges of illegal substance trafficking and involvement in cartel activities. He pled guilty and faced a possible life sentence, but he got lucky. In 2019, he was sentenced to only 7 years and 3 months in prison, and he was released in 2020 under supervision. But he escaped 3 days later and fled to Mexico, where he hoped to find safety and probably start a new life. But 3 days later, he was found dead in an abandoned car near Culiacan, along with his sister and one of his henchmen. His body was decorated with bullet holes, and his diamond ring was gone. Number 6. Edgar Alexis Meza Soto. Just like El Chino, Edgar Alexis Meza Soto was the leader of another arm of the Sinaloa Cartel known as the Los Salazar, a ruthless gang of assassins loyal to El Chapo and his Sinaloa Cartel. Popularly known as El Piwi, this young man was in charge of smuggling illegal substances and humans across the border into the US. He inherited this role from Adam Salazar Zamorano, the founder of the group, who was captured and imprisoned in 2011. The Los Salazar were not just traffickers, they were also farmers and protectors of the cartel's crop farms and labs. They had a hand in every stage of the drug business, from planting to production and transportation. But El Piwi was not satisfied with just making money. He wanted to make a name for himself as a fearless and brutal leader. He orchestrated several vicious attacks that claimed hundreds of lives in his territory. Sonora. He thought he was invincible until fate caught up with him on a fateful day in August 2020. He was only 20 years old when he met his end a few days after leading a deadly raid. His bullet-ridden body was found on a lonely beach on Loma Dorado Boulevard, near a chapel dedicated to the Virgin of Guadalupe. He had been dumped there by his own men, who had to abandon him after he was wounded in a shootout. They feared that keeping him alive would attract unwanted attention from the authorities. And so, El Piwi's reign of terror came to an abrupt and disgraceful end. Number 7. Raul Meza Torres. Recruited at the teenage age of 15, Raul Meza Torres wanted to follow in his father's footsteps in the Sinaloa Cartel. So he joined the ranks of the most notorious substance trafficking organization in Mexico, led by the infamous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. He was ambitious, fearless, and ruthless. He loved to flaunt his weapons and armor on social media, where he gained a cult following among other young wannabe baby gangsters. He was groomed to become a criminal mastermind, just like his father, Raul Meza Ontiveros, who was one of the top leaders in the cartel. But his father's legacy also made him a target for the enemies and the authorities. His life was cut short by a bullet on April 25, 2010, when he and his friends were stopped by the law enforcement officers for a routine check. Instead of cooperating, they tried to intimidate the officers by brandishing their firepower. A shootout ensued, and Meza Torres was either hit by the officer or by one of his own friends. He died from his injuries the next day at a private hospital. His father, Raul Meza Ontiveros, had also met a similar fate 3 years earlier when he was unalived by rival gunmen. Number 8. Aureliano Guzman Loera. You might recognize the surname of Aureliano Guzman Loera as the same one that belongs to El Chapo, the notorious drug lord. That's because Aureliano is his brother and a key figure in the Sinaloa Cartel. He took over the leadership of the cartel's operations in the Sinaloa highlands after his brother was captured. He is known for his ruthless and violent acts. He eliminated his own half-brother, Ernesto Guzman Hidalgo, in April 2015, accusing him of betraying El Chapo and leaking information that led to his arrest. This act of violence sparked a fierce conflict within the Beltran-Leyva cartel, since Hidalgo was also the father-in-law of Alfredo Beltran-Leyva. He also orchestrated a daring rescue of one of his hitmen, Julio Oscar Ortiz Vega, in October 2016. He wounded 10 soldiers in the process and unalived 5 in the process. Aureliano did not stop until he got his man out of custody. He managed to evade capture by fleeing into the mountains of Sinaloa, despite a massive manhunt by 50 military trucks. He is still at large, and the U.S. Department of State is offering up to $5 million for any information that can lead to his arrest.
Number 9. The Los Chapitos. Joaquin Guzman's sons were not famous before their father was jailed. However, they stepped up to run the cartel when their father was gone. They proved that they had the same smarts and brutality as El Chapo. El Chapo has many children, maybe 24 or more, but only 4 of them are in the narco trade: Ovidio, Jesus, Joaquin, and Ivan. They go by the name Los Chapitos, which means the miners. The US and Mexican law enforcement agencies are after them, except for Joaquin, who is very discreet. They have a lot of power in the city of Sinaloa and the town of Culiacan in particular. During the 2019-2020 pandemic, they imposed a 10 p.m. curfew which the government did not support, but people who did not follow it were punished with violence or fined. In 2016, another cartel was said to have kidnapped 2 of the Los Chapitos, but they freed them soon to avoid making El Chapo mad. Recently, on January 5, 2023, the Mexican government took Ovidio Guzman into custody, and the city was turned into a war zone in minutes. The cartel members caused havoc, setting fire to buses, making roadblocks, and firing at aircraft. This was like what happened in 2019 when Ovidio was taken but let go because of the extreme violence that ensued, to the extent that military officers were held hostage by the cartel members. But this time, he is still locked up and could be extradited to the US soon. Number 10. Brian Donaciano Olguin Verdugo, or El Pit as he was known in the drug world, was a vital part of El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel. He was the bridge that connected the cartel with the Colombian criminal networks, especially the ruthless FARC guerrillas who were led by Ivan Mordisco and Gentil Duarte. He had a mission to go to Colombia in February 2022 to make a deal with the FARC renegades, whom he wanted to become the sole provider of coke for the Sinaloa cartel in the area. But this trip was his undoing because he was unaware that he had been on the Interpol Red Alert and that they had eyes on him from the moment he set foot in Colombia. He dreamed of living in the country and had even begun to negotiate for land to purchase. During his time in Colombia, he moved around with a lot of security and bulletproof cars, thinking he could evade any capture as he held secret meetings with his associates. But like Samson of the Bible, his love life betrayed him. He had a relationship with a model whom he often met when he was in the region, and one day she convinced him to accompany her to the statue of Christ the King, where they took a picture of themselves with their lips interlocked in a romantic kiss. She posted the selfie on her Facebook page, and shortly after, DEA agents spotted him and informed the Colombian anti-narcotics police. After days of following him, they nabbed him in a well-planned operation. He was stunned and tried to buy his way out with $1 billion pesos but failed, and now awaits extradition to the US, where he is wanted for drug-related crimes. Who do you think is the most ruthless and dangerous of them all? Are there any other hitmen that we missed or should have included in this list? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to get notified when we upload new videos. We have more amazing content coming your way, so stay tuned. And if you have any suggestions or requests for future topics, please let us know in the comments section below. We love to hear from you, and we appreciate your feedback. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.